everybody. Welcome to Wings for Life. My name is Ann Edenfield-Sweet. I'm the executive director and the founder of Wings, and we are so happy that you're with us tonight. Tonight, Maxine Chavez is going to talk about drug testing. What it is, how it's done, all the various ways that she could do it. In fact, she even does toenail testing, which is a new one to me, but she does that. She's the only one in the state of New Mexico that does that. So we are going to learn about all these things. Maxine is a wonderful, caring person. She runs the Albuquerque Drug Testing Incorporated. She's the founder of it. She's a native New Mexican, native Albuquerquean. And they have bilingual staff. They do everything that they can to help you. So if you are going in for drug tests for a job, if you are having to do it and having problems with a PO and you've come up dirty, she can help you. And I know that she has helped so many people that we have sent her way. And so I'm so excited she's with us tonight. We're going to learn all the ins and outs about drug testing. So Maxine, welcome. We're glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Ann. It's a pleasure to be here. And as Ann said, my name is Maxine Chavez, ABQ Drug Testing. And I wanted to talk about all the different misconceptions about drug testing, and I wanted to be able to educate people on drug testing because there's so many different ways to test for drugs and alcohol. So the first thing that I wanted to start off with just basics in testing. Maybe you're going for a job and you have to have a pre-employment drug test. Or maybe you've been sent in for a post-accident test from your job. Or maybe you just want to see if you're clean and you can go out to do pre-employment job tests, you know. So you just want to check for yourself, personal tests. Or you might be a mom that's concerned with your child and you're concerned with what might be going on. So you want to bring in your child for drug testing. So starting off with just the basics in testing, there's laboratory tests and instant tests. And laboratory test is a lab test that we send overnight to the lab. And we can do any configuration of drug tests. We can do anywhere from a 5-panel to a 17-panel, even a 30-panel for different types of drugs. The most popular is the 5-panel drug test. And then we have what you call an instant drug test. And the instant drug test is a drug test that can give you results in 5 minutes. And a lot of companies like that. A lot of people like to know right away. And that's basically a yes or no. In a laboratory test, the most popular test, as I said, is a 5-panel urine screen. So 5-panel, meaning 5 drugs: cocaine, marijuana, opiates, and opiates would be the codeine, morphine, heroin opiate, amphetamines, and anytime you see amphetamines in a laboratory test, it's going to include methamphetamines and ecstasy. That's all in the same group. And then you have PCP. And that's one of the most popular tests. There's also something called an ETG or an ETS, ethyl sulfate, ethyl glucuronide. That's a drug, that's an alcohol test. And that is an 80-hour alcohol test. A lot of POs like to use that. A lot of courts like to use that, the 80-hour test. And so that can be added to any 5-panel. Those are basic and the most popular. Now 10-panel. We do a lot of 10-panel urine screens as well. So that's the original 5 drugs that I just shared with you. But then it also goes into the barbiturates, the benzodiazepines, which would be like Ativan or Valium. We see a lot of benzos. Methadone, methaqualone, and propoxyphene. Now, propoxyphene is Darvon and Darvocet, and you don't see that as much, but that's included in a 10-panel urine screen. Again, a laboratory test will go overnight to the lab, and we can usually expect results if everything's good, negative, within 24 hours. If it has to go on for further testing, when you send a drug test to the lab, what's going to happen is if they do find something shows up positive, you'll get tested twice. And then after that, it'll go to a medical review officer. And the medical review officer is like a doctor, and they're going to call you and verify any prescriptions that you have, anything that you have that might have caused that to show up positive. And then once they verify that prescription, then it's going to come back to us as a negative drug test, okay? Again, going into the ETG, ETS. This is a very sensitive test, and it's for alcohol. And I say sensitive because it'll show positive too if somebody has eaten a dessert with alcohol. You know, if it can sometimes show positive if somebody's diabetic. So we always ask that question too, because that could also show positive in the system. That's a good test. Mostly we use that quite a bit for courts. Laboratory testing, again, this is just going over all the different types of laboratory tests. You can do 5-panel, 10-panel. Another really popular one is 10-panel with extended opiates. What's extended opiates? That's your oxycodone, your Percodan, Percocet, Tylox, your hydrocodones, Vicodin, your hydromorphones, Dilaudid, and anything with the, you know, just all the pills, basically, all your opiate pills. Some people like to add 10-panel with extended opiates, extended amphetamines, alcohol. Again, you can add any type of drug test. There's also drug testing for spice, and that's a synthetic marijuana. We don't see that as much anymore. For a while there, we were seeing it quite a bit, but we don't see spices as much. So going now to the instant drug test. These are very, very popular. Employers like the instant drug test. People like to come in and just check themselves. POs, a lot of them will use the instant drug test as well too. So we have a 5-panel, 10-panel, 10-panel plus alcohol. The thing with instant drug test, it's either a yes or a no. When you send it out for a lab test, that'll give you a level if something's positive. It'll give you a screening threshold, and then it's going to tell you what level it's coming up at. But an instant drug test, either yes, you're positive, or no, you're not. So a lot of times if I'm working with employers, or say you come in and you want to check to see, am I still positive for marijuana? And we run the test and it says yes, but you want to know how close am I to being clean? Well, then at that point we can send it to the lab, and once we send it to the lab, then we're going to get a level and determine how close you are to that screening threshold to being clean. Again, we can use any configuration of drugs for an instant test. So instant gives a yes or no. Lab tests give levels. Okay? And this is just, again, talking about the same drugs that I had gone over for the 10-panel lab test. We can do the same thing for the instant test. Now we get into hair drug testing. And this is probably the one thing that there's so many misconceptions about hair drug testing. I've had people walk into my office and go, oh my God, will it know what I did in high school? I'm like, no. What it is every half-inch of hair goes back approximately 30 days. So the standard hair test is 90 days. That's an inch and a half. The hair testing provides 2.5 to 4 times the number of positives. Longer detection window. The courts love the hair testing. Why? Because hair testing is looking for a pattern of abuse. It's, if you did something once or twice, hair testing is probably not going to pick it up. But looking for a pattern, then hair testing is great. You can go back 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year. Say somebody comes into my office and they don't have head hair. They're bald. We can use body hair, and this really works well for men. And body hair goes back approximately 1 year. The arm hair, leg hair, because body hair lies more dormant, so it doesn't grow as quickly as head hair does. Again, the most basic for hair testing is your 5-panel hair test: amphetamines, methamphetamines, ecstasy, cocaine, opiates, the codeine, morphine, heroin, PCP, and marijuana. That's your most popular hair test. Then you go into the extended opiate screen for hair testing: oxycodone, hydrocodone, hydromorphone, Dilaudid, Vicodin, Percodan, Percocet, Oxycontin, all the pills. Turnaround time for hair testing: if it's negative, again, this is a test that goes overnight to the lab, and if it's negative, we get it back within 24 to 48 hours. If it's positive, it's just like the other lab for your urine screens. If it's positive, they're going to go ahead and test it twice. And then it comes back to us, and at that point, we determine if it needs to go on to a medical review officer. The interesting thing about hair testing is people want to know, what does a positive level mean? It gives us levels, and there's so many variables in hair testing to actually show what a level is, but you see what the screening level is, and then you look at what the level that is coming up. Kind of gives you a baseline. Think of it this way: you've got to intake quite a bit of drugs to get into the bloodstream. The bloodstream is what feeds the hair to grow, and it gets pulled up into the internal shaft of the hair. When we collect it, we're collecting as close to the scalp as possible, and we're collecting about a number 2 pencil size of hair. And people get freaked out that you're going to cut all their hair or leave a big old hole, so we're very cognizant of trying to just collect a little bit from 4 or 5 different locations, head hair, so they don't go out looking like they're missing a big chunk of their hair. So, but hair testing, it's a wonderful test in the fact that it's looking for that pattern of abuse, and it's very good at determining that. We have something called a child guard hair test. So the child guard differs in that we do this primarily for children. We have a lot of parents or grandparents. We have a grandparent that came in one day, most beautiful little child, about 1.5 years, gorgeous little baby, little angel, came in and was very, very concerned about her daughter and son, and brought in this child to be tested. And we took her hair and we tested the child. What we saw is not only does it test the external hair for passive, so if there was smoke, drug smoke in the house, or the sweat or skin oils of a drug user, that can get onto the hair of a child. And then they're looking also if the child ingested anything. So this child had marijuana, but also ingestion of marijuana. And in these days, that would be really simple because you have all the edibles, and they look like candies or cookies. And apparently the child had gotten into some of it, and not only had the child ingested it, but she also had it in her hair. So they call it native and carboxy. Carboxy is when a child has ingested it. Native is when it's environmental on the hair. It's a great test if there's any concerns for children. Again, it's 3.5 to 4 times more likely to pick up any drug, drug detection. And that's called Child Guard Hair Test. It's a protective tool for children at risk in harmful environments. And it's the only hair test designed to detect passive exposure to drugs. We've actually had quite a few children brought in for that type of test. In Child Guard, again, we're looking at the past 3 months or every half inch going back 30 days, depending on how much hair the child has. 5-panel, the same kind of test that we're testing for in adults, we're looking for in a child. There's a 5-panel, 7-panel, 9-panel for children. I think there's also a 10-panel. And again, it's looking for the accidental or intentional ingestion of illegal drugs, drug smoke, contact with drug smoke, contact with sweat or skin oil of a drug user, contact with the physical substance, or the ingestion of a physical substance. And then you go on to nail testing. Yes, nails can hold on to drugs the exact same way that hair does. Nails are made of keratin, which is the same thing that our hair is made of, but nails have 4 times the keratin as that the hair does. And you don't need particularly long nails to get the test done, but we do collect nails from all 10 fingers, and those go back 3 to 6 months. And then we collect, or we could use toenails, and toenails go back 10 months to 1 year, and that's the look back. Again, same drugs. When the client comes into our office, they're cutting their own nails, we're watching it, and we collect them and put them into a little foil. We run, all of these tests are run through with a really strict chain of custody. If you're a client and you're coming in to get a hair test or a nail test, you're going to watch us do that test from beginning to end. You're going to watch us fill out the paperwork. You're going to sign off on it. You're also going to watch us put together the test in the foil and put it all together and get it off to the lab. You'll watch us seal everything in front of you. That's really important. Whenever you go get a drug test, whatever company you go to, make sure that you are watching everything that's being done. Make sure you're seeing where your specimen is going, that it gets put into the vials for the lab, that it gets sealed in front of you, you sign off on the seals. Make sure that you sign off on the chain of custody paperwork and that the collector is signing off. Make sure that that bag gets sealed up in front of you. These results are really important to you, and you just need to make sure that that chain of custody is followed. I've talked to many people who say they've gone somewhere and they disputed the results of their test because they never saw that test get sealed up, or they never saw what they did with the urine. They walked off with it. How do they know that it got put in the right vial with their name on it? They didn't initial anything. So it's really, really important. Every one of these tests, whether it's nail, hair, urine, you need to follow the strict chain of custody. You need to make sure that everything's done just the way it's supposed to. And we make sure we follow every single test from beginning to end. Nail tests, again, as I said, 3 to 6 months for fingernails, toenails up to 12 months. When you do a hair test, we also get levels for the nail test as well. You'll see a screening level, and you'll see if it's positive what your level's going to come up to. These are all the different drugs that you can test for in a hair test. And another thing that you can test for in hair is alcohol. It's called ETG hair. Now, this is an interesting test because if it shows up positive in the hair, it's indicative of excessive or risky drinking behavior, no matter what level. A positive is just going to show that that person drinks a lot, excessively. Because think of it, alcohol comes into your system and it gets out of your system very quickly. But alcohol that keeps coming into your system and is always in the bloodstream and then gets pulled up into the hair, then it's going to show that you're positive, and that's because you're drinking quite a bit or binge drinking. So ETG hair or nail is a great test to find that out. If there's been allegations made against you of excessive drinking, that's something that you would want to know. All the different drugs that can be used in a hair and nail test, you've got the main ones that we've talked about, but you've also got mepridine, which is Demerol, and tramadol, and fentanyl. And I have had so many requests in the last 3 or 4 months for fentanyl testing, whether it's urine testing, hair testing, nail testing. I guess there's a lot of fentanyl up and coming out there. Sufentanil is another drug from fentanyl. And you've got buprenorphine, which is Suboxone, Zolpidem, Ambien. We've had a lot of requests for Ambien. Apparently Ambien is a sleeping pill, sleeping drug, and there's a lot of weird things that happen with people who are on Ambien. So they want to determine if they are on Ambien. So that's a big drug. Demerol, tramadol, those are pain pain medications, oxycodones, pain medication, ketamine. That is actually, ketamine is used in for animals. It's a tranquilizer for animals, but I guess people like to use ketamine a lot too. So we have those. Again, going back to the nail test, the ETG in the nail, when you think of alcohol and you think of New Mexico, we're number one for the past 20 years in alcohol abuse, alcohol-related accidents. And even though our traffic accidents have gone down, what has gone up in New Mexico with alcohol is suicides, accidents as in falls, diseases that are caused by alcohol, liver problems. All of that has gone sky high, and we are still number one in the nation for alcohol abuse. So the courts are realizing that it's really important to look at alcohol testing as well as drug testing. So they really like to look at the nail tests, the hair test, urine screens, 80-hour alcohol test. And here's another test that's really popular right now. It's called PEth, phosphatidyl ethanol. And what that test is it is looking for binge drinking episodes within the previous 21 to 28 days. And it is a phospholipid that's formed in the red blood cells. So we're going to collect 5 spots. We're going to do a finger stick, and we have a little card, and we're going to get 5 spots of blood. Once that blood is on that paper, it's a special paper, we can hold on to that for a year, and it'll still have all the vital information to tell us about the alcohol abuse, or if there was any, on that test. It's an excellent test, and I've had so many people who come in to take that test. And you know, alcohol, self-reporting, I've heard in alcohol is very difficult. It's hard to know how much you're drinking, and then when you get this test back and you see levels, and I've had quite a few people did not realize that they were binge drinking to that level or that extent, and when they actually see the numbers, get themselves into rehab. And we've had that happen quite a bit. It is, how can I describe this? It's a test that if there are allegations made against you that you've been drinking alcohol, this is a good test to take. A urine test is a good test to take if it's right now, but if they want to look back that 21 to 28 days, then the phosphatidyl or the PEth test is a great test. We send that overnight to the lab as well. We get results within 48 hours, 72 hours if it's negative. If it's positive, it takes about 5 business days. And that is the one test that I've seen. I know it's right on because you can see it in people's faces. You know, I had a client one time, and I knew something was going on in his life, and he just didn't look well. He came into the office. He was court-ordered to do this test. I know he was having troubles with his job. He had just gone through a divorce. He was looking at losing his child. And he came in and did a PEth test. And I think when he realized what was going on in that PEth test and saw the level, the numbers, and what did those numbers mean, and we counseled him and went over the positive and what those numbers meant. And he put himself into rehab. He came into my office like 6 months later. I didn't recognize him. He looked great. He got a new job. He got remarried, and the biggest thing was he got his child back. And he was thrilled. And he said, you know, if it wasn't for that PEth test telling me exactly, you know, seeing those numbers and finding out that that was an exceedingly high number, and you knowing exactly how much I was kind of drinking, he said that was very eye-opening to him. And at that point, he put himself into rehab, got his life together, and everything came together for him. And this was a person that I was very fearful was not doing well at all. So that's a great test, and it's helped quite a few people. Again, goes back 21 to 28 days. So how do you choose the right drug test? And it really just depends on the situation. And we always try to counsel and to help our clients determine, what do you need the drug test for? Is this for a court case and we have a court order? Then we strictly have to follow that court order. Is it because you want it for informational and you want to determine what's going on with you? Is it because you have a child at risk and you need to determine what's going on? Maybe you don't know what the drug of abuse is. You're just concerned something's going on. So you need help trying to determine what drug test is going to be the best for you. And then we have to determine, is it alcohol, is it drugs? I mean, the biggest thing that I hear a lot is if I wasn't drinking, I wouldn't have done the drugs. Once I start drinking, then I do the cocaine. Once I start drinking, then I do the meth. Once I start drinking, then I do whatever, And we hear that all the time. So do we need to look at alcohol, or do we just need to see what drugs? So fingernail, hair, blood spot, urine, how far back do you want to go? What's the window of detection that you're looking for? Again, for urine, the window of detection, it can be 12 hours to 4 days. So most drugs last in your system about 4 days, with the exception of marijuana. Marijuana is one of those drugs that stores in the fat cells. And this is what's interesting, is the longer you've smoked, the older you are, the slower your metabolism is. It could take 2.5, 3 months to get marijuana out of your system if you're trying to clean up. And I know a lot of judges, they say no, the books say 30 days. But we're playing with different types of marijuana. It's stronger. There's different hybrids that, different types, and there's different ways to smoke it, eat it. There's wax, there's oil, there's edibles. So all of that depends on how long it's going to last in your system. Marijuana can last anywhere. If you're a young kid and you have a great metabolism and you use it sparingly, it's going to be out of your system in a week or two. If you're an older person and you've been smoking for 10 years and maybe you're a little heavier, your metabolism doesn't work as well, it could take several months, 2.5 to 3 months to get out of your system. And we've had people come into our office and just test for that until they show that they're clean. Again, choosing the right test. We can help you do that. We just determine what's going on, what you need done, and we can help you figure out what is the best test. Testing starts at $30 for instant tests, and depending on some of the other tests, it can go up to $100, $200, $300, depending on how far back you want to go on a test. So we have all of those. Alcohol testing, think 3-3-3. 3 days, that would be a urine screen, ETG. 3 weeks, that would be the PEth test, going back 3 weeks. Or 3 months, think of hair and nail for alcohol, going back 3 months. Time frames, I think I kind of touched on the time frames when you come into our office. Everything goes out to a lab except for the instant tests. Those we do in-house. You get your results before you leave, or the results get sent off to the company, employer, court, whoever needs that test results. With COVID, I'll tell you, the turnaround times for our tests have gotten longer. Before I could tell you exactly when your test was going to be back, and now it just depends. But most urine screens, we get them back within 24 to 48 hours if they're negative, 5 to 7 days if they're positive, because it's got to do the double testing, the medical review officer. Hair testing, 24, 48 hours if it's negative. Positives add a couple more days. Hair and nail, 3 to 4 days. 5 days, 2 to 3 more days if positive. The PEth test takes about 4 days if it's negative, add 2 to 3 more days if it's positive. And then we didn't even talk about the DNA testing. We do DNA testing. That, of course, is to determine who the father is. Say that the father has passed on and we don't have the father, but they still need to determine whose child this is. Maybe it's for inheritance or for health reasons, or, anyway, what we would do for children is there's grandparentage tests. So you can bring in a grandparent, the child and the grandparent, and determine if that child is belonging to that grandparent, and then in turn was the father. Their child was the father. Siblingship. A lot of people will come in and want to know if their children are full or half children. We have avuncular, say that there's no grandparents, the father has passed, or we had a story one time where the father and the mother had passed, and they had a child, and they had grandparents in another state that didn't even know that they had a grandchild. And so we had set up a test in another state for the grandfather, and then we did the DNA paternity test for the child in this state. And it was fascinating because it turned out that the child had a grandfather. That was really cool, and the grandfather was excited to determine that that was his child. We had another grandfather come in one time who had an adult grandchild, and he wanted to know. His son never accepted that child, but he always knew in his heart that was his child. And before he left this world, wanted to know for sure. We did a grandparentage test, and it was his grandchild, so that was really cool. Those tests are about a 5-day turnaround for a DNA test. You have a legal DNA test, which is court-ordered, or you just need it legal because maybe you're going to go after child support for whatever, reason. But the DNA grandparentage, or I'm sorry, the paternity, 5-day turnaround, and that's for legal, and it's also for say a lot of people just want to come in and they just want the information. It's not a court case. They're not looking for any money. They just want informational DNA drug testing. And so we can do that as well. The turnaround time is the same. We use a lab down in El Paso, and they're excellent. So DNA paternity is another test that a lot of people will come in for as well. The cold and hot truth about drug testing. Well, so for employers, they want to be able to do randoms, post-accidents, pre-employments, court-ordered tests. Random, I wish more people would do randoms, because if you want a business and you don't want drugs being used in the business, you want a drug-free business, well then a random testing is great. But most employers in Albuquerque, they will just do pre-employments. It just depends. Post-accident, anytime there is an accident on the policies and procedures for most companies, then at that point we will do a post-accident test. And court-ordered pre-employment. We also have a lot of people who come in with their own urine or different ways to fake a drug screen, and we kind of know all the little tricks that are going on. I know a lot of people out there think they can fake the hair test by using these special shampoos that they sell, but they don't work. I mean, we've determined, our labs have determined that the drug's on the inside shaft of the hair, so putting something externally to pull that out doesn't work. We have a lot of people that try all kinds of different things to drink before they come in for a drug test, or bringing their own urine in, and that's just one of the tricks of the trade. I mean, we're always looking out for that, and we understand that what's going on, but that happens quite a bit. Court-ordered tests, we get a lot of those, and it's really, we have to determine and follow that court order as best we can. But a lot of times we can get a court-ordered test, and say that they want us to do a 6-month test, and the guy comes in and has 30 days of hair on his head. So we have to try and do the best we can, or we go to body hair and do something further, longer. And so that happens quite a bit too. So there's a lot of interesting things that happen in our office. It's never a dull day. We never know what's coming through the door. Even though we work off of a schedule, we're very good at getting people in and out because we do work off a schedule. We tell people to call, make an appointment. We also go on site for a lot of companies, and we do on-site drug testing. Another aspect of drug testing is DOT drug testing, and that's for federal type of drug testing for courts. And truck drivers, airline pilots, trains, planes, automobiles. We do drug testing for that as well. So, again, I'm Maxine with ABQ Drug Testing, and you could reach me at 298-2200, and we're on the corner, we're just west of Wyoming at 8338 Comanche Road Northeast. So, thank you.
Well, thank you. Isn't she fantastic? I mean, I just love Maxine because she is so thorough. She explains it so carefully and so clearly. I mean, all of us, it's so easy to figure out what's going on here. And I remember one of our board members who had spent 33 years in prison, and he has over 1,000 years of parole, and he got a negative test. He has a blood disorder and came back negative, and he could have gone back to prison for over 1,000 years. And he went in, I said, you've got to pay the money, you've got to go in and see Maxine. Sure enough, he went in, he was cleared, never had another problem. So if you're dealing with any issue like that, if you just want to have clarity and you want to know for sure, and that was so interesting about people that want to know about their drug use or alcohol use, and is it really severe? That's another thing to do. So anyway, we thank you so much for being here. Now also, on our website, if you go to wingsfly.org, you will find a placemat that looks like this. It has all kinds of information on this in addition to the drug testing. And then just a reminder that next week we are going to have Karen Kahn, and she is the Deputy Cabinet Secretary for the state of New Mexico for the Corrections Department. And I'm thrilled that she's going to come on and she's going to talk and share a little bit about the impact of COVID, how that's impacted corrections, how it's impacted the staff, the inmates, of course, no family visiting, and what are they doing now? And I'm really pleased to say that they have come up with a way to do Zoom. And so we're actually doing Zoom programming in all the prisons. So it's a wonderful thing. So I hope you'll join us. Now, I always close with a story. And this is a fun one. The author is unknown. It's called My Drug Problem. I had a drug problem when I was young. I was drugged to church on Sunday morning. I was drugged to church for weddings and funerals. I was drugged to family reunions no matter the weather. I was drugged to the bus stop to go to school every single day. And I was drugged by my ears when I was disrespectful to adults and teachers. I was also drugged to the woodshed when I disobeyed my parents. And those drugs are still in my veins, and they affect my behavior and everything that I do and I think. And what's interesting? They are stronger than cocaine, crack, or heroin. And if today's children had this kind of drug problem, America would probably be a much better place. Now, isn't that interesting? So I want you to think about that drug problem. But very seriously, we do have a drug problem in America. And if you know anybody that is having a problem, please get them in and be tested before anything really serious happens to them or to anybody else. So I thank you for being with us tonight. If you are part of our Facebook or YouTube audience, this will be the end of the program. For those of you on Zoom, hang in there, because we're going to go right into breakout rooms, and then you're going to have a chance to ask Maxine any other additional questions or talk further about drug testing. So thanks for being with us tonight. Hope you have a blessed day. Bye-bye.